What's up, guys? Welcome back to my coverage of E3 2014. This, of course, is Rob from Rule of Two Review, and now it's time to review the whole show. Alrighty, well, it is June 12th, 2014, which means that it is the third and final day of E3, which also means that the show is still going on. Now, it's not quite over. There's still more than a few hours left. I know that there's still some streaming and interviews happening. Nintendo's Treehouse is still going, which has just been fantastic content throughout the whole week and the whole show. So I know that the dust hasn't quite settled overall since there is still a few more hours to go. But I think we've seen enough. We're probably done with surprises, it feels. So I feel good enough given the fact that we at least had all the press conferences to go over, which I have reviewed each one of the three consoles below. So please click those links and follow that stuff so you can check out my reviews of Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. And so since we've kind of been through all of that, I feel like now is as good of a time as any to kind of basically, sit back, take a look at everything that happened, kind of ingest the entire week's worth of information and sort of just go from there and discuss the entirety of E3 2014. So I was going to take some notes and kind of prepare some very specific things that I knew I would want to go over. But I sort of decided against that last minute because I wanted to make this as natural and organic and off the cuff as I possibly could, because that's just kind of, I think, the best way to take a look at these kinds of things. Overall, I guess, just starting with the big main thing. And I'm also going to try not to make this a very long video. We'll see if I succeed because I typically fail at that. So overall, when looking at E3 2014, I don't know how you guys feel, but personally, I think it's been pretty darn great. The vibe has just felt super positive. Everyone's been very reactive to everything that's happened in a mostly positive way. I've heard and read and seen very little backlash to everything overall. No one's really, when it comes to the three manufacturers, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, no one really seems to be too down on anyone. It seems like everyone did okay. Even the stuff that wasn't overall impressive, it's like that's not really been the focal point. That's not been what people have been talking about. In general, everyone's literally just focused on the content for the most part. And that is great because that's actually what E3 is supposed to be about. I don't think we need to be fighting about who did better and who did worse, creating memes, trying to be funny, trying to slam or diss the guys that aren't your favorite company, And of course, that stuff still has been present a bit. I'm not going to pretend like it isn't, but it's just kind of hard to find it. It's just not, pervading all of the E3 coverage and everything going on this year. And I just think that's so wonderful. And I do think that that's mostly because when you look at the three main console press conferences, they were all great. Sony did great, Microsoft did great, Nintendo did great. And that's, I think, what has to be the most important. And it's everything that I said in my E3 predictions videos and in my specific video about what does it take to win and does it matter if anybody does win E3. And one of the things that I said when, trying to make a case for the fact that maybe it doesn't matter if anyone wins E3 is that provided we can walk away from everybody and say, hey, what you showed this year was great content. Even if I maybe think, this company maybe did better, I still like what you showed. And that's all that matters. And you know what? That's exactly what this year feels like. It's almost kind of cryptic in a way because I literally discussed these very things happening and, not really thinking that it was going to, but sure enough, that's kind of how it feels. And I think it's a good thing. I'm glad I was right. I'm glad to see the positive reaction. I'm glad to see that everyone did well. No one has to be saying, oh, these persons suck. They dropped the ball. Microsoft conference was terrible. Nintendo's conference was terrible. Like, no one's saying that kind of stuff, And I just think that that's just a wonderful thing. There was so much content that we saw. There are some negative points, so I'm going to touch on those in a minute, and then I'll finish with the highlights. But, everyone showed so much content, and almost all of it was good, and that's just all anyone's focusing on. And God damn it, that's exactly what the spirit of E3 and the spirit of gaming as a hobby is all about. So I think one of the biggest things that we can all take away and that I want to take away from this year's E3 is also something that I've discussed on my previous E3 hype preparation videos. And that's really when dissecting the press conference and how those things are presented and delivered to us. Those have been the staple, the norm since E3's inception in, I want to say 95, maybe 96, 1995, 96 area, mid-90s. When I was a teenager, somebody who was, even though the internet didn't exist at the time, still following the events and the announcements and happenings within the industry. A lot of you guys out there might be so young that you didn't really know that or weren't experiencing it at the time. Or you might not have, even if you're old enough, you just might not have been gaming at that time, which is fine. I myself was a gamer and I was a teenager, so old enough to remember these things things and have experienced a lot of this information as it was all brand new. At the time, only via magazines. That was how we got our news. It was Nintendo Power, Game Pro, Electronic Gaming Monthly, and probably a couple of other ones that I'm just not kind of. Game Fan was a big one, stuff like that. And that was where we got our news. And this whole time since from then until now, we've just been dealing with press conferences. In the last couple of years of the internet and streaming, we've been getting excited about them via watching them at home and waiting for these surprises and these Twilight Princess kind of moments and reveals that just get us excited and makes everyone stand up and cheer. And then, it kind of changed a little bit last year and mostly this year because Nintendo has been making this move to digital presentations. And last year's was kind of fumbly. Even though the content was good, it still wasn't like really well handled overall. This year, Nintendo killed it. They knocked it out of the park. A lot of people are claiming that they won E3, and I'm going to get to that topic near the end of the video. But what that does show is whether or not you agree or disagree, the positive reaction to it shows that it really was successful, and people really do like that. So this year, we still had two other typical presentations and press conferences from Sony and Microsoft. And so what I think I want to take away from this year, and I think what a lot of people will take away from this year because Nintendo's was seen as so successful, is that, the typical press conference might, like I predicted, begin to kind of go the way of the dodo. It might become, an antiquated type of way to present your E3 stuff, and here's the best way I can explain it, from my own perspective this year, because I had to watch the press conferences out of order. I was busy all day on Monday, so I didn't get to watch anything that day until I started Microsoft's at midnight, 12:30 at night was when I started the first press conference, after the whole day had concluded. So I watched Microsoft's press conference on Monday, then I watched Nintendo's happen live, the digital event on Tuesday, and then after I'd watched that, then I went back and I rewatched all of Sony's conference. So I watched them all in their entirety, but I watched them out of order. And I mentioned this in my Sony review, the fact that I watched Sony's after watching Nintendo's digital event made Sony's feel antiquated. It felt, even just a couple of hours later, I was like, oh, it's not, I'm like less excited watching people standing on stage in a room full of hundreds of gamers and press outlets taking pictures and live tweeting and blogging. It was still cool. And if you watch my review, because I liked Sony's press conference, so I'm not trying to diss Sony, not their fault. I'm not saying they did anything wrong. But what I'm saying is it made me realize the format already, as soon as Nintendo was done with theirs, with how well handled it was, instantly I was like, wow, this is like less exciting for me. So I'm going to tell you, mark my words, another video I'm going to link below. Please watch my Nintendo E3 digital event, theorizing video that I made a couple of weeks ago, where I made the claim, if Nintendo did well with this, I bet in the next several years, slowly, we will see an adoption of this format for almost all of E3 content completely, when it comes, and I'm not saying this is going to happen next year. All of a sudden, everyone, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft are all going to do these digital things. I mean, it could be like a slow rolling out where people do it, for some of the content, or maybe, Microsoft doesn't do it for another couple of years. Maybe Ubisoft doesn't do it for another couple of years, whatever. But I do think that because we've seen so much success with Nintendo's and because everyone responded so well to it, and we saw that Nintendo was able to control 100% everything that happened. There were no awkward pauses, no awkward moments, no mistakes with footage, no messing up with live gameplay, no Skyward Sword gameplay kinds of moments. We got intimate, in-depth, personal interviews with the developers at hands of these big games that they revealed and they showed, along with tons of trailers and gameplay from all these games. So they were, and it was also fun because they had the Robot Chicken stuff. They had the very special effects filled fight between Iwata and Reggie, which was so entertaining. It was just fun. Like, that was exactly the kind of thing that gamers are going to connect to and what we want to see. So it was presented fun. It was presented in a controlled manner. There were no mistakes or awkward moments. We got a ton of gameplay content. We got a ton of footage. We got a ton of interviews with the people responsible for the game. So they were very proud to say, we're so proud of our content. We're also proud of the people that make them. Here, learn why they were inspired and ambitious enough to want to make this title the way they did. And it also showed those people having fun. And smiling and enjoying what they were doing and what they were talking about in their jobs within this industry. So that whole package was so well done. Not to mention, the other huge thing here is that it's cheap. These press conferences for E3 very notoriously cost millions of dollars. When you've seen Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony take these stages in the past, they've spent millions of dollars to do so. So they, of course, we can see the monetary rewards and they make money from having good press conferences, sure. But imagine making that money and spending a quarter of the price to produce something like what Nintendo did this year. That was successful, generated hype, and now I guarantee you more people than ever want to and will be buying a Wii U. So they've done the greatest thing. And I think that going back to my original point where once I started to watch Sony's, I was like, God, this just feels lame. Like, I don't really want to watch a stage and people walking on and off and doing blah, 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 So didn't affect my review and feelings of Sony. Their press conference was still awesome, so I appreciated that. But I think that the idea is going to go away. And I think that that's an important thing to take away from E3. And I'm not just saying that because I predicted that this may happen. And granted, we don't know that it's going to be true. My prediction may still be wrong. I'm just saying, based on the internet and everyone's reaction to how positive Nintendo was, I still think that my theory may hold true. That's what I'm getting at. We still may yet see my theory hold true because of how the press conferences were handled this year and Nintendo's. So, not just because I'm predicting this do I feel like we're going to take this away from this year, but simply because of the way everything was handled. I think that that's a big thing. We may see a shakeup in any way, maybe not 100% to Nintendo's idea, but something is going to happen, I think, over the course of the next several years for E3. I think we're seeing the genesis of a shakeup of the format, and I think it's going to be for the better. I think that how the content comes to the gamer and the investors and developers and people it's important to watch these every year, I think that we're going to see a vast improvement. How? I don't know, but I think Nintendo has laid the foundation for the shakeup. Just like they did, they call it a disruptive strategy when they released the Wii, and that turned out to be successful just like they thought. I think this may be a disruptive strategy for E3. We may see cooler, better things happen from all developers and companies down the road. So that's a pretty huge thing when looking back at this year's E3. Now, here's probably one of the only kind of negative things that I can say about this year's show that I've really gleaned from it as I move forward with my video and realize, of course, I'm still going to make another half-hour freaking video because when it comes to E3, that's what I'm going to do is talk for 30 minutes. So the one kind of thing that I realized isn't very exciting right now, and it's both about E3, but more so just about what the state of gaming currently and I've talked about this many times, and this isn't just the Nintendo fanboy in me segregating these companies, but how Sony and Microsoft particularly are moving forward with their generation and with their, this is exemplified in their E3 press conferences and both of their press conferences, which I both liked. Check my reviews below. I enjoyed them both a lot. So I'm not slamming those guys, but, so I mentioned this even more so in my Sony video that what's happening right now with gaming, with the next generation, and with more specifically the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One is we're just seeing this marriage of libraries where all this content is multi-platform. It's available for all the consoles and for PC, or at least more than one of the two. Even some of the exclusive Xbox One stuff is still coming out for PC, like Titanfall, or even still coming out for Xbox 360, stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's not really exclusive to the Xbox One. Both Microsoft and Sony, even though almost all the content they showed was great content for really great games and good-looking games that we all can't wait to play and buy, they're still 90% not exclusive to that platform. So, I'm kind of retreading some points that I made in the Sony video, so forgive me for that, but it applies when analyzing E3 this year as a whole, because I'm looking at the state of the industry and the state of gaming. And, it does help keep me a bigger fan of Nintendo than the other guys overall, even though I still love Sony and Microsoft and I love using Steam. But when these guys are just releasing all the same freaking games on the same platforms, it's just not exciting. I made these points before. On Sony's stage, we saw Mortal Kombat gameplay and we saw Far Cry gameplay, two games that impressed the shit out of me and I can't wait to buy and play. But Sony may have made me excited to play those games, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to be playing that game on their platform, because that's also coming out on the Xbox One and the PC and some of that stuff on the Wii U as well. It's like, I'll play anything that's third party and comes to the Wii U on that first. The Wii U is my primary gaming platform and will continue to be so. Now, the stuff that doesn't come out on Wii U but does come out on PS4 and Xbox One, which is certainly a lot of titles like Batman and stuff, those are great games I'm going to play. So thank you, Sony, or thank you, Microsoft, for showing me other things that I really can't wait to buy and play. but I may play them on the other person's platform. So you really just sold me on a game that the other company is going to make money off of because it's not only on your system. And so multi-platform games have to exist. They always have and they always will, and that's fine. But when that's most of your library, that's kind of a problem. And the fact that E3 this year further exemplified, there weren't a whole lot of secret exclusive projects for Sony or for Microsoft. There just weren't. We knew to expect Uncharted. Little Big Planet we knew was coming. It was great to actually see it because we didn't know we would see it this year. But those two games, plus Microsoft had Halo and Forza, and like that's kind of it. Let me see. So Microsoft did also have... this kind of goes against my point. Microsoft had Scalebound exclusive by Platinum Games. Gonna buy that. And Sony revealed, I'm forgetting all these titles. I'm so sorry. Oh, Let It Die, the exclusive Suda51 game to the PlayStation 4. So I'm gonna buy that. So there was a small smattering of third-party exclusive stuff. Well, Ready at Dawn isn't really third party, they're second party. So Order 1886 doesn't really count. Plus, I'm not excited for that. There was Insomniac Games' Sunset Overdrive for the Xbox One. Very excited about that. So there is some stuff, but you take away those couple of games, and the other 20 games each company showed at their press conference was all multi-platform stuff. So that is just... Again, I don't want to take away from the games because the games are great looking, but that doesn't make me specifically excited for Sony or specifically excited for Microsoft or specifically the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, respectively. It just doesn't do that because it's like, well, this shit's coming out on all sorts of different platforms, so I can just pick and choose. It's like standing in front of a tree with different copies of games, and I'll just pick this game from this branch and then this game from this branch and put them into the same basket, that basket being my living room and my TV. And then there you go. And that's so, no one's really further selling me on their platform or their ideas for this current new generation, Now, when talking about the current state of gaming and analyzing this concept, this is what helps Nintendo do so well. They did a great job this year at E3. They, a lot of people say they won, and I'm going to have to agree. When you look at Nintendo's digital event, not only was it just fantastically handled and really fun to watch, they showed nothing but exclusive content. Literally, go back and look at it and think about it. They showed not one single game that was coming out on another platform. It was all Wii U and 3DS stuff, and it was mostly Wii U stuff. There was like one 3DS. It was Pokemon. That was the only thing showed, And they had talked about their Amiibo rollout, and that was it. They showed a bunch of games. They were all exclusive, first party, third party, and that's all they showed. Like, it was great. They showed that exclusive content is what matters. They were like, you know what? If you want to play Yoshi's Woolly World, or if you want to play Splatoon, Xenoblade Chronicles X, thank God for that game. If you want to play these games, you know what? You have to buy a Wii U. As opposed to Sony, who's like, you want to play Batman Arkham Knight? Well, you actually can play that on the Xbox One or PC if you want. So, and same with Microsoft. So I'm retreading again. But that's the point I'm trying to make. So that's what makes me feel really great about Nintendo this year. And those are the kind of things that even through their faults, I know they come back strong with these kind of moments. And it reminds me why, yes, this is why I'm a diehard Nintendo fan. Thank you guys for doing what you do. And I love Sony and Microsoft. I love their Xbox and PlayStation brands. So I'm not dissing them, but I'm just kind of showing you why, for myself personally, as my own gamer, that's why Nintendo keeps me a fan of them number one overall. So that's kind of why. That's sort of how this year's E3 sort of set the stage for the present state of the gaming industry as we get into this, sophomore period of this new generation and what's going on. All the consoles are great. All the hardware is great for their own respective reasons. Microsoft made a great thing pulling out the Kinect and dropping the price. So that's like a really great value finally. So everything is happening great. And the PC, they just get everything. So PC and Steam is just doing awesomely. So everyone's has great hardware, but the content is kind of all over the place. You can look at it from a lot of different perspectives. Some perspectives make it really great and exciting. Others not so much, like what I just spent the last, several minutes talking about. So Sony and Microsoft, I really hope that we start to see more from you guys to diversify your content moving forward and over the course of the next few E3s. And no, exclusive DLC or timed downloadable content doesn't mean a fucking thing to me and to most gamers. I get that it kind of is okay and some people like it. It's fine as a bullet point, but that sure as shit isn't giving you exclusive content, and it does not mean that your version of Mortal Kombat is going to be better than another person's version. Who cares? Don't care. Don't talk about it. That kind of stuff doesn't count. And that is probably one of the only unfortunate trends coming out of gaming right now. So, that aside, that's sort of my whole personal feeling and standpoint on all the console manufacturers and the current state of video games. And so in summary and trying to wrap this up, I think when, finally just getting down to the nitty gritty of it and talking about E3 2014, there's only one thing to say. It was awesome. I'm willing to bet almost, if not most of you guys out there do agree. It's been a great E3, lots of content, some disappointing things like not being able to see certain games that I'm going to talk about on my next E3 video. But, as far as what actually was showed, the fact that all the conferences were handled fantastically. For myself, seeing Nintendo just knock it out of the park this year was great. They had the Treehouse streaming. It's still streaming right now, streaming all this personal hands-on stuff. They had Eiji Aonuma, they had Reggie, they had developers from all the different games coming out for the platform this year and for 3DS this year, just showing real personal in-depth stuff. I had that thing streaming and watching it the entire time while doing other stuff this whole week. It's still streaming downstairs in my living room right now. Like it's been great. So Nintendo just did the greatest thing. They had the best presentation and they had the best consecutive content throughout the entire show. So they did it right. Kudos to you, Nintendo. So any year where I can feel like Nintendo knocked it out of the park is a great banner year. Not to mention Sony and Microsoft, also great years. Lots of good games for everybody. Multi-platform and exclusive. All the conferences were great. Everyone's bringing really cool, unique things, man. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be excited about, Only so much for this year, but what this year's E3 I think really did is set up a fantastic 2015. So that's really cool. We're only coming up to the end of the first half of 2014. A pretty exciting back half. There's some good games coming for all the systems. But 2015 is going to be really great. E3 this year really showed that. So, even though all the conferences went great and all the companies did fantastic, who won E3 this year? Nintendo won. I think that I have to say that. Not just the Nintendo fan in me saying that. It just seems pretty obvious. It's really nice to see a lot of other people saying that same thing. The Zelda reveal went smashingly. Everyone's so excited about that. So really kudos to Nintendo. It feels so good to be able to say that for the first time in a couple years. I think 2010 was the last time Nintendo won E3. So that was 4 years ago. Right on. Thank you, Nintendo, for finally stepping up to the plate and making it happen with great content, great presentations. But still, Sony, Microsoft did great. So many good games. I mean, this year's E3 has been fantastic. It's been really, really good. So I'm definitely curious as to what you guys thought. This is my opinion and my personal review of E3 this year. I think Nintendo won, but I also think everyone else did great as well. What do you think? Did you enjoy E3 this year? Did you get to see the things that you needed or hoped to see? Are there things you feel disappointed about? Which of the console manufacturers do you think won, if that even matters at all? I mean, I definitely want to know and hear what your opinions and thoughts on E3 this year is. Start the conversation going with other people and find out what everyone thought. What were your favorite games and all that good stuff. So in wrapping up, speaking about that, stay tuned in another day or so. I think tomorrow I'm going to try to get posted my top 10 games of E3. That's probably going to be my last E3 video for the year. Really excited to make that. That's going to be just kind of a fun extra one. There's going to be a lot of games to pull through. I have a couple of ones set for sure, but I'm going to have to take some closer look at a few other things and kind of see what's going on. But I'm definitely going to be excited to put that together. So keep a lookout for that in the next day or two, my top 10 games of E3. And so that's pretty much it. Subscribe to Rule of Two Review if you like what I'm doing. Like and share the video, of course, if you like the video and what's going on. Please share your thoughts and your comments and everything about E3 below. I want as many people sharing their opinions as possible. And thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy the last day of E3, and of course, game on.